Okay, we are now ready to start modeling. I'm going to start at the end of part one. I'm going to show you kind of what we're working towards. What we are working towards at the end of part one is a fully integrated three-statement model. A couple of things to point out. You've got the row header here is actually a dynamic row header that pulls the name of the company, in this case Apple, using that equal sign, quotes, text with ampersand, right? If I change this to some other company, let's say Samsung, that's going to automatically pull it. Again, cover this in the Excel crash course, but the idea is you have an equal sign with quotations, right, of the text you want. So if I wanted to say, leverage buyout model, whatever I want to say, buyout model, space, and then ampersand is the thing that connects text in Excel with cells, right? And that'll say leverage buyout model Samsung, right? So let me undo that. Here I have financial statement model 4. You get the idea. So that's the first thing. Let's change this back to Apple. So here I've clustered around some general inputs about the model. One of the things that we've talked about earlier is how some models have general inputs organized in one tab, which feeds into another tab. Our general preference is actually try to keep as much stuff together in a financial statement model as possible. That reduces the likelihood of linking errors, and so we've done that here with the general assumptions we've laid out on top. We've put in the company ticker, AAPL. We also have a circuit breaker, which I'm not going to get into now, other than I will say it has to do with the circularity that I alluded to that we're going to need to deal with towards the end of the program. We've got the latest closing share price. We've got the share price date. Again, today is September 5th, so the latest closing share price was yesterday. The latest fiscal year-end date for Apple was about 4 or 5 months ago, September 29th, 2018. That's the latest fiscal year-end. They're not a calendar year-end company. And we've got the share count. I'll walk you through where to get there. I'll also show you how to construct this drop-down menu. And then I've also we will ultimately build a drop-down menu that lets you kind of toggle between different scenarios. So this is what we're working towards. We will build a fully integrated three-statement model. You have an income statement that shows Apple historically, and then Apple's forecasts, right? So you see Apple's revenue going from $215 billion in 2016 to $330 billion, at least on a forecast basis. And down below is where we have the growth rates and the margins. We have the balance sheet forecasting. Apple's got $237 billion. Notice that we are actually forecasting declines in that cash. The model balances, thankfully. We'll talk about what happens when the model doesn't balance. We then have the cash flow statement. You may notice that the cash flow statement does not have any historical numbers in it. You may have noticed that for the income statement and the balance sheet, you got blue cells. These are historical data, 2016 to 2018. Same with the balance sheet. There's 2 years worth of results. Balance sheet usually reports 2 years of results as opposed to 3 for the income statement. Cash flow statement, we don't use any of it. And that's, as I've alluded to in the past, because the cash flow statement is purely a year-over-year reconciliation of changes in the balance sheet, etc. And we're going to spend a lot of our time building that model. Now, powering all this work is a whole bunch of schedules down below. Property, plant, equipment schedules, other non-current asset schedules, retained earnings, a revolving credit line, interest calculations, and last but not least, some sensitivity and scenario analyses that let us sort of define what makes up a best case, a base case, a weak case. At the very bottom, we're also going to reflect an earnings per share calculation so we can see how our expectations for the company's diluted earnings per share compares to what the consensus estimates look like. So that is a 30,000-foot view of what we are building or what we are going to be working towards. There's a lot here and a lot to do before we get there. And so we are going to start, as promised, with essentially a blank Excel screen.